It's time, once again, for DOS games and stories from my childhood. Actually, no, mostly just DOS games. There's no epic saga behind me finding this one. I think it was on a shareware collection we bought, and I know a few of you are rolling your eyes and saying, "Ha ha, you paid for shareware." Yes, we did. On account of having no internet connection nor a PC I would trust to handle it, we paid for a collection of shareware games. And I do mean the first episode is free, send me money for the rest type of shareware. Didn't have a choice otherwise. It was either that or magazine cover discs, and that would have still lost me the cost of the magazine. It's not a put down or anything. I might have never played XCOM were it not for PC Gamer. It's just that free demo culture either didn't exist, was tied to a physical magazine, or was all up on a version of the internet I had no knowledge of. Damn, that was a hell of a sidetrack. Normally I save those for simple games where there's not much to talk about. Anyway, Micemen comes from Soleau Software, who were a pretty prolific purveyor of shareware games back in the day, and a company whose name I'm only guessing the pronunciation of, frankly. Their output is mostly puzzle games, but not in that modern everything must be match free kind of way. They're more the type of puzzle games with, puzzles. Limited solutions rather than random chance. As the catalogue text file puts it, educational, non-violent, strategy logic games for the whole family. Thankfully not one of those usual efforts where you headbutt numbers and crap. Besides, since when is teaching strategy and problem solving not educational? As far as I know, it's just William Soleau making all of these. That's one guy releasing 60 odd games over the course of, 3 decades? I have to respect that kind of work ethic. And in terms of naming a software company after yourself, you could have done a lot worse. Oh wait, somebody completely and utterly did that. So this Mouseman contraption starts you off with a wee unskippable animation and some PC speaker beepies. Oh yes, you know you're in the age of the PC speaker when your game lists mouse as a requirement. After that you set your difficulty, the game randomly picks who goes first and first they go. So what the hell actually happens? Well, you control a bunch of mice. Actually, no, you don't control them at all. You take turns with your opponent to move columns of cheese up and down so the mice can run through the gaps. Blue mice will go right, red mice will go left, and both of them will submit to the will of gravity if the ground below them suddenly gets just that little bit lower. The aim is to get all of your mice to the opposite side before your opponent does. When all your mice are home safe, you win. Your mices will go up and down with the columns as they move. Both block and mouse will wrap around the board when they're pushed past the edge, which we'll all agree is both a handy shortcut and far better than the crushing-based alternative. What I'm usually tempted to do is set up a line of mouses. That way I can pretty much carve a straight path and get them all in the goal at once. What I always forget is that I have to sit there and watch each individual mousy man dawdle along to the destination. One at a time. If you're using DOSBox, you can increase the cycles to make it slightly faster, but there's a ceiling to it. They're not going to end up Benny Hilling their way across the screen or anything. It seems simple, but there is strategy to this, trust me. If it had been released today, they'd probably just remove the opponent, give you a limited number of moves and a bunch of levels to solve. With microtransactions, obviously. I think this must be compulsory by law nowadays. Programming AI is hard, you guys. Since you and your dastardly opponent person both have control over the board, you have to ensure that your moves don't allow the enemy mice to gain ground. There's nothing worse than carefully setting up your conga line for a victory parade before that last move hands the victory over on a silver bloody platter. Ah well, you know what they say about the best laid plans of mice and men. Due to the way the game is designed, you can end up in a stalemate of sorts. Most games quickly end up with a bunch of mice in the centre columns, meaning that the only way for them to go anywhere is to let their opponents pass so a space will get cleared. Of course, whether this happens on purpose or accidentally depends on you. You can only control columns in which you have a mouse, and you can't touch the last column moved. You don't need the stallion-like power of a 286 to sit there playing tug of war. That said, you could just make the same move on the column next to it, but I don't know how you solve that problem. No, actually, if it's a two-player game, I do know the solution. Punch the son of a bitch. And this comes up very rarely, but pulling the same column 6 times in a row will lock it for a turn. No idea which problem that was meant to solve. It's good enough that the game is solid and seemingly bug-free. I mean, I would hope so by version 2.2, but then there's little extra touches sprinkled in to make it even better. You can toggle the sound, save and load your game, just one save slot apparently, change the colour of the frame and cheese blocks, and there's all these extra animations like the mice parachuting down the end lemming style and flexing when the last mouse reaches their goal. If one of your mice runs over an enemy mouse's head, they get squished a little bit, and if you sit idle for a while, they'll even eat the cheese off the blocks. I wonder if I could just leave it to run for like 12 hours and the mice would have eaten their way through the maze. As much as I love this attention to detail, I'm really just running out of things to say. Overall, it's a very simple game, and the only reason I'm picking it over any other Soleau Software game is because it's the one I've spent the most time with. No idea why this one resonated with me more than the others, but it did. I've lost a fair few hours to what is a polished but ultimately bare-bones title. Then again, we haven't even spoke of my horrible Spider Solitaire addiction. And unlike many of the older games I talk about, you can still buy this. The company has a modern day presence thanks to their gloriously 90s website. Web-safe colours, bezeled buttons, animated GIFs, the works. I'm pretty sure the only thing missing is a guest book. The entire back catalogue is on offer via their online store, and I can't promise it'll definitely work, I haven't tried it out, but that's still really awesome. The development aspect always interests me. I've spent 4 years studying the subject after all, so I love that someone took the limitations of DOS and worked with it to come up with essentially a new game. Frankly, it astounds me that we can still invent new genres. Then again, a genre only tends to get invented because one great new game gets cloned about 100 times. But owing to the relatively primitive distribution methods of the time, namely putting a disc in a Ziploc bag, the issue is a little less widespread. And yet, I still haven't come across a game quite like this one. Obviously, Micemen requires DOS or DOSBox to run on the Windows of modern, and I always lamented the lack of a remake. Soleau Software made something a little bit like it called Quarry and another one called Spacewalk, but they weren't the same. Probably not bad by any means, but I didn't stick with them long enough to find out. I wanted my Micemen and this wasn't it. Hell, I ended up making a Windows version when I was practicing programming. I added a few tweaks, highlighting the selected column, adjustable speed, wee things like that. Not that I could ever release it, mind you, I don't have the license to do so, and in any case I lost the source code yonks ago. Plus, I never properly finished the AI, so it really might as well be pulling those columns at random. Most people remake Pong to practice programming. I remade Micemen. Hi, I'm old. Although I have this fear that Flappy Bird may become the new Pong in that regard. So it seems like Micemen might be relegated to the realms of nostalgia forever, which is a shame, because it's unique, puzzly, requires logic and strategy, in other words, needs a wee bit of brain power to play. Shows that you don't need fast animation or scrolling screens or even more than one screen to have something compelling. I really admire the brain that comes up with ideas like that. And it may have been a few years since Soleau put anything out, but there's no reason why he couldn't if he wanted to. And even if he doesn't, I think 30 damn years would earn him a break, don't you?